putting my sucking skills to use. Oh, and you keep this video for later.
Welcome back to Drinks First, the podcast where you can match with New York City's Kinda Eligible. Today we're at the Standard East Village at No Bar filming our very first episode of the season.
I'm your host, Ariana Nathani, and today we are here with a very special guest. After a long hiatus of us being gone, I would love to learn a little bit more about you. So can you tell me how old you are, where you're from, and where you live in New York City?
Mm-hmm. So I'm 23. I'm from Naples, Florida, and I live in Soho.
And how long have you lived in New York?
Almost, I feel like 4-ish years now with COVID. I was going back and forth for a while, so like 4 is a safe number, I think.
Did you go to college?
So I dropped out of college after 3 months because I never wanted to go, and I decided that I wanted to make my parents as angry as possible in the fastest way possible. So I dropped out, and I did a little bit of acting, and then I moved to New York by myself after
wait, acting? Tell me more about that.
I feel like I immediately dropped out of college, and I got this.
What prompted you to drop out of college?
I never wanted to go to college ever. I applied to 20 schools, and
That's so many schools.
It's a lot of schools. And I got into most of them except for 2. And I got into all my top choices. And then I was like, wait, I wasn't expecting this to happen. So now what I have to do is pick the closest one to home so it's easiest to drop out. So I picked like the worst school that I got into.
How does that work?
I don't know.
Why would being closer to home be easier
because
to
I could
drop out?
drive, and then I wouldn't have to fly home, and it would be an easier transition because of like, oh, my mom's going to see how miserable I am, and then she's going to feel a little bit more.
So you were already thinking about dropping out before
Always. I never wanted to go.
Then why did you go through applying to 20 schools?
I love writing, and I love talking about myself, and so the essays were really fun for me, honestly.
An insane thing to say.
I know, it's the truth. I really like writing, and so it was just fun getting to fill out all the prompts, and I was really passionate. My logic there was I want to go back to school eventually when I'm in my 40s, but I wanted to study archaeology and classics. So what was I going to do? Put myself, pay $200,000 to go to college and get a $30,000 salary to dig bones in Turkey? Probably not the most sustainable thing for my lifestyle, even though that sounds really cool. I thought that that's more of a longer term play.
Are we still trying to be an archaeologist?
Eventually, like long term, that would be
I would
the
go
dream.
dig some bones in Turkey.
Exactly. But when you have $30,000 and no shower and you might have student debt, probably not the wisest choice.
Sure. So you dropped out. Were your parents pissed off?
So pissed off. My mom didn't move me out of college, and I lived 2 hours away from where I went to school. And my really good friend came and he helped move me out, but it was a process. I drove back and forth kind of like from coast to coast in Florida 3 times to move all of my stuff home, and they were living with me. They were so mad.
And so what did you do after that?
So I found an acting coach right away. She used to be the on-set coach for Disney and Nickelodeon, and I started taking lessons with her, and then she submitted me to a small agency in Miami. So I started doing a little bit of commercial work, and
Are there commercials out there with you?
I don't know if they ever aired. It's like a lot of commercials will get filmed, but stuff getting aired is a whole other story because then you have to get paid for. There's other stuff that you'd end up getting paid for. So some of them didn't air, and a lot of them filmed at the beginning of COVID. So things shifted a lot. So I did that, and then a friend of a friend asked me to audition for this movie that was filming kind of right by where I was from, and so I filmed this horror movie. And it was really fun, and it was during COVID, so we all had like masks on. We were getting tested all the time, and we were pulling these 24-hour days, and we were filming this horror movie, so you're getting to be like covered in blood, and it was just very, very fun. And some of the people now are successful, like they have like HBO shows and stuff, but it was a really just fun experience, and then I fully solidified my move to New York.
Okay, so tell me about that. How did you end up in New York?
My family's originally from Long Island, and so I'm very familiar and very comfortable with the city, and I always thought I was going to end up here somehow, but I thought maybe I would have a little bit more of a steady footing before I did, not just drop out of college, go in one C-grade horror movie, and then move here. So that was a little bit interesting, but I decided like it's my time to either sink or swim, and I really don't feel like sinking. So I moved here. I kind of like crashed on friends' couches for like a little bit, not super long, just to figure out where I wanted to live. And then I was in the West Village for 3 years, and I landed very well in that case. I situated myself in a good spot.
Let's talk about those 3 years.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So I think dating was a huge part of establishing myself because
Okay.
I only had
Also, how old were you at this point?
barely 19, 18, 19, like it's very blurry that time.
Yeah.
Which I think is obvious. Like everything is moving so quickly. So somewhere around like the 18, 19 year mark, it was when 19 is when I felt very much so fully formed here. I was so unsure, but dating really helped because I knew 2 people here to begin with. And then my friends were in college and I didn't want to be around college kids. That was entirely the whole point of my dropping out. It would have been silly to come here and only be around NYU sophomores or freshmen. And so dating was opened a lot of doors to meeting people. And so I just did a lot of dating across those 3 years, like so much. And I originally used to do like life coaching. Imagine getting life coaching from an 18, 19-year-old that dropped out of college. Like, crazy move, by the way.
Who was hiring you for life coaching?
Like thousands of people. And I would use astrology and I would do stuff like that. And I did that for a year and a half. And that's how I paid my rent and my bills.
Okay, how did people find you as a life coach?
I did a little bit of advertising on TikTok and it worked really well. Like every time I posted, it went viral. And then I didn't have a big audience because I would get like a few thousand followers and it would give me anxiety, so I would delete the account and then I would just start again whenever I needed more business.
Oh my god.
Every single time, which is definitely not what you should do, by the
No,
way.
definitely not.
No, I'm sure as you're very familiar, building an audience is important, like kind of the whole point,
Yeah.
actually. So I definitely shot myself in the foot a few times, but I quickly transitioned to I love to post online. I've never been embarrassed to share about myself. And I ended up making a TikTok about some type of, can I say this?
Yeah,
Sex
yeah,
tip.
yeah.
Okay. I made a TikTok about some blowjob tip and everyone was like, we have to hear. I come home from dinner, 5 million views on the TikTok that I had posted.
In like a matter of hours.
In a matter of hours. And so very quickly after that, I just kept posting TikToks about it. And 2 weeks later,
blowjobs, about sex,
blowjobs, sex, dating, just as anything I could really run my mouth about.
At this point, did you feel like you could talk about that?
I think sex has always been like a special interest of mine.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds weird. I wasn't having sex. I didn't have my friends didn't believe me. We talked about it actually last night. I didn't have my first real kiss until I was 19. Like real
So
kiss.
how were you talking about any of this stuff?
My roommate and I now, we went to high school together and we would go in Barnes & Noble and we would sit and read like all the books about sex, like the Kama Sutra, like we would
The
read
Karen Keeping of You.
No, literally. You're like, I'm getting hair where? Yeah. You're like, what's going on? No, literally, I love that book though. It's so real.
Love that diva.
Love that diva. That's what the American education system's coming down to,
No,
by the way.
literally.
Is the Karen Keeping of You.
They're gonna ban that book.
It's gonna be
In
a
the
bad
next
book.
4 years, that book is gonna be banned.
Stand with the Karen Keeping of You. I remember my mom will tell you this. I was like 6 or 7 and I came home from school and I had a crush and I said, is it age appropriate to roll on the floor and kiss someone? And she was like, what happened at school today? And I was like, nothing. No, I don't know.
So you were always
Super curious. Always incredibly. So, I mean, not really though. Like the thing is not really at all. Like
Yeah.
I didn't do anything in high school. I think I maybe went on one date in high school that my mom forced me to go on. I always was boy crazy, but I never actualized those feelings into anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to the city and it was kind of like I broke the seal. And once I realized, oh, I have this effect on people, I enjoyed that and I wanted to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like I've always had great sex advice because it was something that to me was almost not like a formula for success, but there are things that you can't change about anatomy. And if you learn about anatomy, it really makes you feel more confident in the bedroom. Like I was always terrified of what happens when I finally start having sex if I'm bad at it or I don't know what I'm doing. So the way that I handled that fear was by just researching over and over and reading as many books as possible. So at the time when I started the podcast, like I think I said this to you, I don't even know, I'm not sure if I'd like given a blowjob, which is even crazier.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to say that for a while. Am I gonna get sued? But I wasn't sure if I could give a blowjob, but I knew I was doing something right because I was having thousands of people write me from all over the world saying you saved my relationship. Like to this day, I get messages years later.
Whoa. Okay, well, you just mentioned podcast. So do we want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we can. The people can guess. The people can guess. So I had a podcast that I sold to a large corporation very quickly after. It was 2 weeks after that initial TikTok went viral.
2 weeks after the blowjob TikTok.
So I had I sold it to them on my 20th birthday.
Had you started the podcast already?
Yes, there were 3 episodes.
Okay, so let me just get this straight. Make this blowjob TikTok. It gets millions of views in a small amount of time.
Yep.
This is like peak TikTok. You start a podcast yourself.
All
So-
September 2021.
September 2021, you're like in your bedroom.
I was at my family house. My grandparents are in the other room, so I'm whispering on TikTok and I'm making like hand gestures, and I'm in a Gap sweatshirt. Like I remember this.
And you filmed
vividly.
it?
Filmed it, and
Where were you posting this?
just on my TikTok, and then overnight, I gained 35K overnight, and then my account got shut down. I think it's 75K, and then I started a new account, but this time wasn't out of my own choice. But within the next 3 weeks, it was the #1, and I put it on Health and Fitness it was like above Huberman. Like it was the craziest thing that's ever happened to me by far.
You had a #1 podcast, health and fitness podcast.
Yep.
I mean, I know that it was in like the global top 50.
Yeah, it was like
It was insane.
it was insane.
And this was before or after you sold it?
This is before. So
Okay.
all of that stuff, I talked to a few companies about selling it, and I ended up ultimately picking the company that I did because I really liked them and I talked to them. But it was definitely like I was in over my head. And
Did you have any representation or anything? It was just you.
Just me.
And you're 20.
Yeah, I was on my 20th birthday, so like very freshly 20, which I think is important. And no representation, no family in the industry, and like nothing. I didn't even own a mic. I didn't have a mic when I started the podcast. I talked into my phone.
Yeah.
Like-
I did that too when I started my podcast.
And now look at you. Now we're here.
Now we're here.
Now we're
I
here.
mean, look at you. So you sell.
We sell. And I do the podcast until
Was it like, curious about the economics, was it a lump sum or like what was the deal
Lump-
that was offered to you?
lump sum for the existing episodes that I already had. So they were kind of like back purchasing so that anything moving forward, they owned all of it. And then it was weekly payments per episode in like a structure that was already worked out. And then certain split sales for merch, which we did. We did like Christmas merch and ornaments and sweatpants and the whole thing. And it was a really good learning experience. Like you learn a lot from working with a company like that. Definitely has its upsides and downsides. I don't know if I would do that again.
Yeah.
But it was a really, really great learning experience. But it was definitely like being thrown into the deep end almost instantly. Like,
Yeah.
there's no other way to. It's very intense to go from being in your bedroom making a joke about blowjobs to beating out Ben Shapiro's podcast and the New York Times podcast. It really, like, you sit there and you're like, what am I actually doing with my life now?
Right.
Yeah.
And you're talking about things that.
I don't have experience in.
Right.
I had my first kiss maybe 3 months before that.
Wait, tell me about your first kiss.
Oh my god, I can't, like, my first, like, I had like pecs in high school, but like nothing, like no real kiss. This guy, I don't remember his name actually. It was like one of my first nights in New York. I was at this house party and he like came up and like just, it was horrible. Like it was so bad, and it solidified the fact that I will only like tall men because this guy was like 5'6" and choked me so hard he broke my diamond necklace off my neck, and to
What?
this day I never found it. To this day, I don't have that necklace. It was
Okay.
really pretty.
Borderline concerning.
Borderline. But yeah, I mean, it was just like a kiss, and then I never saw him again. And I just started dating up a storm right after that, and then starting the podcast. I was like, well, now I need to put my money where my mouth is.
Right.
Like, let's start getting good content. And so I started dating feverishly
Like for the podcast?
for the podcast. Like, I
Okay.
started dating feverishly. I started the podcast over 3 years ago, and I probably have gone on maybe 70 plus first dates. That's like a conservative estimate.
But now the podcast doesn't exist.
Now the podcast doesn't exist. I left the podcast back in June 2023. So it's been like a year and a half since the ending of it. But I had met someone that I really cared about in February. And it was the first time where I had something that I was so wanting to keep private and so wanting to share, or not wanting to share, like, with the world. And obviously I'm not like choosing a boy over my career. I was already having some moments of pause and feeling like this is not what I want to do and not what I want to stand for anymore. And I think meeting someone who made me feel really supported and made me feel like well, if I leave this, it's not the end of the world for me. He was super supportive of it. He thought it was really, really cool. Like, I don't want it to ever sound like, this guy doesn't want me talking about my dates. Like, it was never like that. But I felt like I had the confidence to leave, and I'm glad that I left when I did.
Yeah. So tell me about the time that you were in the podcast and you were dating up a storm. How were you meeting people?
I was a dating app girl. I also believe in paying for dating apps if you can afford to.
Okay.
I think that you're...
Hot take. Tell me more.
So I think that you should pay for dating apps because most of us know our preferences, and I think that being honest with yourself, and your time is money. Like, I'm not going to go sit for hours and scroll on an app to maybe get one person out of 60 that I'm convincing myself to be attracted to. I would much rather like pay the $30 and do a month and say, I'm going to really be head down and try to date and try to match with people that I am attracted to for a month. And then if that doesn't work, say, maybe the apps aren't for me right now. Maybe I'm being closed-minded and then stepping away from them. But instead of kind of like half-assing your scrolling for a little bit, I just think is less fruitful.
So you were getting on apps, you were paying for them, and you were filtering for what you want.
Yes.
Or what you thought you wanted.
Yes. I was always, my filters where I always said college educated. And we joke about this. I don't know how clear it is that we're friends, but we joke about this because I think that I know where my strengths are, and I think I make jokes about college a lot, but I'm like, it's fine that I say that because I didn't go, so like, what are you gonna say, that I am judgmental?
Yeah. Well, you are someone who wants somebody who's like highly educated.
Yeah, and I think it's because eventually, like, I want to pursue an education, but just much further down the line when I have established myself and my life in other ways, like when I can just be fully focused on learning, not about learning for a career, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, college educated, what were the other preferences?
6'1" to 6'7".
Okay.
And then I did 2 miles from the West Village at the time because the reality of my situation is I'm not going to be taking the subway for 30 minutes home every night to come see someone. Like, if I meet them organically, great. I would never not be with someone based on where they live. But if I'm using dating apps for convenience, I'm going to maximize on that convenience.
Okay. So tell me, what were the kinds of people that you were meeting then?
So, I mean, I went on this date, and I talked about this a lot on my podcast, but this was like one of the very first dating app dates that I went on. And this guy asked, it was a same day date, which I normally didn't accept. And he had also, I can say this because it's defining, he also went to Carnegie Mellon. And we talked about this, you don't know him. And we went on, he was very smart and he works in real estate, and
we can talk about this.
Took me to the bar at the Beekman Hotel, which is one of my favorites.
Lovely bar.
It was a great date, except for the fact that very quickly he just starts telling me that he wants like a Rolex collection. And this guy was 5 or 6 years older than me. So it's not like he's this 40-year-old saying crazy things. Right. He was just, spewing this very kind of like materialistic, borderline classist garbage.
Sure.
About all of these things and like what he thinks a woman is, and just you get a lot of
because
those.
At 25 they really know.
They really know. They know what a woman is.
They know what a woman is.
They know what a woman is, what a woman is, and they know how to please what that is.
Right.
And he was just like a character, and he had way too much to drink, and he looked at me and he goes, I love it here because they put egg whites on top of the old fashions. And I was like, I can't have this conversation with you, dude.
So you were attracting the men that you wanted to find?
Yeah, mostly, I mean, there were some crazies. Like I do have I think a sign on my back that says like, take me or something. Sometimes like I do attract a man that becomes obsessed very easily.
Okay.
Which, so it was a mix of guys like Mr. Beekman Bar, who, are very self-assured and believe that they're deserving of a certain type of woman because of material success that they've had.
Sure.
Which, like, who am I to judge on that? And then the other side of the coin tended to be men who were, like, obsessed or just very dull. I remember going out with this guy who was a second-year analyst, and he pulled me in his room at this party, and he said, I can't quit my job to play guitar because no one could do my job the way that I do. He was like a JP Morgan analyst. Like, what do you mean? There are actually thousands of kids that do your job every summer. And like, they're actually, like, there's a high
There's like a pipeline.
There's a pipeline.
For exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, and I was like, respect for what you do. Like, I'm sure it's a taxing job, but I don't think that it's the thing preventing you from being a famous guitarist, if we're being for
Was
real.
he any good?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I would love to have the confidence of a over 6'2" man with a good degree.
No, they
Who
really...
lives within 2 miles of the West Village. Do we see a pattern maybe? Of like,
Do we see a pattern? Yeah. But that being said, we've talked a lot about this. I think that this is always what I ask guys when I go on dates, which I think is really important, to have the questions that you don't need to wait for someone to make you interesting. You need to make yourself interesting on a date.
Mm-hmm.
I think asking someone what they do on the weekend on a date is like not my favorite question. So I like trying to be a little bit more engaging than
tell
that.
me, like, what kind of questions do you ask on a date?
So I always ask, I have this whole spiel that I think that you have your type, but beyond your type, you have your audience. So it's like a Venn diagram, what sits in the middle, and that's your audience of, the reality is we could all have our type be a pro athlete, NFL players, but that's not the reality. They're probably not going to be interested in me. I know myself, and that's...
You never know.
You never know.
You've had some run-ins with
You never
celebrities.
know. Thank you, Ariana. But like what I'm saying is, like, you never know. And when you walk into a bar, it's not about like who I like the most. I try to think of who I'm most compatible with, like who will also be the most receptive to me. Like, I've noticed in my dating, because I dropped out of college and I followed this very untraditional path, guys in finance are not interested in me because I don't have success that's easy for them to understand, or a path that's easy for them to follow, because finance is so regimented. It's hard to break out of that mindset. Flip side of the coin, though, guys who work in tech and guys who work in startups who followed a non-traditional route have a very big appreciation and for what I've done. And I like that. I like feeling supported, and I like feeling like I don't need to explain the power of what I've achieved, because your partner should already see you for that. You shouldn't have to tell them why you're important.
So for those listening, what is a good way to know your audience?
Think about everyone that you've ever had maybe at least 3+ dates with. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to think about all the things that they've had in common. It can be like even really trivial things, like, do they all wear like the same type of clothing?
Are they all unemployed?
Are they all unemployed? Are they all unemployed? Like, this is no longer drinks first, it's actually therapy first. And so, but yeah, like, you want to think about everything that they've had in common and try to find trends in your dating, but not trends of stuff that even if it's stuff that you don't enjoy, like, you learn things to avoid. But when I go into a bar, like, the guys that approach me first tend to be those that I would also be very interested in. Of course, like, you have randoms here and there, but it's like the guys who are poorly dressed white guys from the Northeast. Like, they love me. Like, lanky white boys, you're all mine. Like,
right.
We're here. Like, and that's what comes to me. And I think it's just, I don't know what it is. But if you go on a date with a guy and you want to feel like you're his dream girl, like, you don't want to feel like you're just this departure from everything he's ever been interested in. Like, you want to go out with people.
Yeah, you don't want to convince someone to like you.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it.
Okay, tell me a little bit more, and we touched on this very briefly because you brought up the Beekman Bar. A question that I like to ask everyone is, where do you like to go out in New York City, and where do you like to eat?
Oh, I like those questions, because I think, like,
it tells a lot about someone.
I went on a date with a guy, and not that you need to eat at only pretentious places, but he was telling me that he thinks St. Theo's food is better than Don Angie. I'm sorry, do you have taste buds or taste? Period. Like, it was the craziest comment ever. And not that you need to, like, to me, some of the best restaurants are in Chinatown. We have one that my family's been going to for years. They change the name every so often, but right now I think it's Deluxe Greenbow. It used to be New
Deluxe Greenbow.
It's so classic there. They used to have a crackling shrimp soup. Sometimes they still do it rarely. Mm-hmm. And you put rice cakes in, so I love it there. Mm-hmm. I think the burger at Fairfax is great, and I'm gluten-free.
The bar sardine burger.
It's so good. So they have recently added the gluten-free bun, which really is a game changer.
Whoa.
And it's a really good gluten-free bun. I think a classic spot that just feels really sexy is Bond Street. Like, you can make it as low-key or dressed up as you want it to. So I think it's a great date spot. I think it's fun, but I also love Minetta Tavern. Always will hold a special place in my heart. And I highly recommend getting the roast chicken with béarnaise sauce on the side and dipping your french fries in the béarnaise
Ooh,
sauce.
that sounds good.
It's really good.
Okay, and what about for going out?
Going out, I tried and true. I do really like Acme. I know that for a while there are like
I call Acme Get Out because it's all white people and there's no cell service.
there is
Scary place.
That's so funny. No, but it's so true. I like to go there because I know that there's never going to be a man that I'm interested in, and I can just like
Safe
listen to music. And like, it's just like weirdly like a safe space. Every guy there, it's just so not for me. I also like my husband's not the club. Like if he is, bigger fish to fry, and. He's not at Acme, so I like Acme. I do like jeans. They have the new music person there, so I feel like that change has been really good for the vibes.
Agreed.
The longer the jeans is around, I like it more and more.
I surprisingly feel the same way.
Yeah.
I really didn't like it when it first started. Now that shout out Danilo has taken over programming, like I think the music downstairs has gotten so much better.
It's really,
Yeah.
it's become so much more elevated than it was before. And I
Agreed.
think like if there's anything else that other places, I used to go to the Box too frequently. I haven't
Been
haven't been in over a year, well over a year since last May. But I really, really liked it for a while.
Mhm.
And I've tried to tone down the clubbing, and I just try to pick something that's walking distance from my apartment, honestly.
Valid. Honestly, you're not at that age, but I feel like I'm at that age.
No, we average our ages out. That's how it
Sure.
works. 25, everyone.
I'm a young soul.
You are a young soul. I'm an old soul, and it balances out. Do you
Yeah,
feel like
it
it's
does
your
balance
first
out.
time on this planet?
Do I feel like it's the first time on this planet?
Yeah, like if let's say reincarnation is real, do you feel like you?
I have moments of deja vu where I'm like, I've lived here before. Like I've lived this moment and like, you know, maybe I lived another life before this, but I don't know. Indians do believe in reincarnation though, so I probably should believe that, but I'm not a very religious person, so
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. Why?
I was just curious because I sometimes feel like I've gone on dates with men and I'm like, wow, it's very clearly your first time on this planet. Like, it's very clearly your first time. This is, in fact, actually your first rodeo.
Tell me more about some of the worst dates you've ever been on.
So I'm recently single, meaning in the span of the last 6 months,
Mhm.
and it's my last relationship is a really tough act to follow, and I was on dating apps for about a month, off of them now, but I decided, if someone's meant to be in my life, I'm going to meet them organically. So I'm walking about the West Village one day in my little TikTok shop workout set in my Harvard lacrosse hat, my dead giveaway. Did not play Harvard lacrosse, just for the record here. And this man walks in front of me, and I thought to myself, if I walk in front of him, he's going to ask me out. So I stop on the corner very strategically. I don't know what from behind, he was cute. He comes up to me. The first thing he says is, "Hi, I'm Dobby." I am Dobby. And then he goes, "Oh my God, you look so young. How old are you? Is this okay?" And
You know it's not okay if you had to ask
to be
if
fair
it's
though,
okay.
I do have a young face. Like I went
Sure.
through TSA when
I
was
have
at
a
the
young face.
and they asked me if I was an unaccompanied minor the last time I was at the airport. I was like, really? I was like, seriously? Okay. And not that I feel that way, but I had no makeup on, so I was like, fair. At least he was trying to be appropriate. And then he told me how old he was. We'll leave this out. And then he was like, I'd love to take you out to dinner. And then came up with a plan standing on the street with me. He didn't give off like weird vibes. I was definitely approaching it with caution, but I was
Mhm.
like, I'll go out with him. As soon as he walked away, I thought, I actually really don't know why I agreed to that. That was a really bad idea. But I don't believe in canceling dates. I think
Mhm.
that you should always just go and say yes, unless you have a really bad gut feeling.
Yeah.
So we go on our first date to Holiday Bar, and it's dead in there, and the drinks were so horrible. And he was like, let's leave. I want to go to a second location. I'm thinking,
They did close. So.
I literally was thinking to myself, this is so horrible. You look like you're babysitting me. Like, I don't want to be out with you. And
He was older.
He was older. Not insanely older, but like,
Yeah.
he wasn't like a Peter Pan New York guy. Like, he's very clearly like trying to find someone, and
Sure.
I can give him credit where credit's due.
Putting
And
himself out there.
yeah, he really was trying. So then we go to Bar Nina, which is actually really
Yeah.
great for drinks there. The drinks were delicious.
Yeah. Shout out Nima for Bar Nana.
Oh, sorry, Bar Nana.
I think it's Nana.
I don't know what it is, but it was really good when I went there. And I don't know what possessed this man, but as soon as we sat down in this booth, he was like pawing me. And it was so
Pawing is a crazy
pawing.
term.
And so I go to the bathroom, and when I come back, he's booked a reservation for our next date, and he immediately tries to kiss me. And I look at this man dead in the eyes and I go, I hate PDA. Now, if you know one thing about me, I love PDA. If you know one thing about me, I love PDA. And what was even funnier was he was like, really? Like, you hate PDA? And I look at him and I go, I'm a huge prude. And he knew nothing about my old podcast. I was like, I'm a huge prude. Like,
Love that.
And he was like, oh, wow. And we leave and I'm like, I just am not interested in like this. We walk upstairs. I'm trying to end the night very quickly, as fast as I can. I was just like not feeling it very clearly. He plants one on me before I can even do anything, just standing outside the bar, upstairs, thankfully. And it was the worst kiss I've ever had in my entire life. I felt like it was one of those automatic toilet cleaners. Like, it was so... I'm actually, like, not even being mean. And you know how I know I'm not being mean? Because one of your friends also went out with him, and she said that he was the worst kisser she's ever had in her life. So it was not just me.
Yeah.
Like, and I knew I wasn't being mean. Like, it's not that I think I'm some star-spangled, like, kisser over here. But I feel, you know, but... It was exceptionally bad. And so, like, I've had dates like that where the guy just doesn't leave you alone. I had a guy write a 112-page play about me, too. And I don't really have a follow-up to that. My friend set me up with him a few years ago, and we went on 3 dates, and then I wasn't interested because I was seeing someone who was... We can talk about men who lie about their age on Hinge, but that's another topic.
Well, okay, you have dabbled with men who are older.
Yes. But it's something I would never do again.
Okay,
ever.
tell me more about that.
I feel very strongly about age gaps. I was so rejecting the idea of my age when I moved here, so I dated a lot of really established men. I don't mean like established in their 40s. I've never gone out with anyone in their 40s, but I definitely went out with men in their early 30s. It was...
And you're in your early 20s.
In my early 20s, like
yeah.
19, 20, 21, and it is something that I would never do again, and I feel very strongly. I think any age gap really above 5 years before you're 24, 25 is just not something that's like good for you. Like, maybe not 5 years, because like 25 to 30 I don't think is crazy, but like 22 to 29 is a huge difference.
It's a massive
difference. And
I have friends now who are guys who their bottom age range on dating apps is like 18, 19. And I'm like, that's insane.
that's nuts.
I was like, do you understand how different we at 28, 29 now are from like the current 18, 19-year-olds?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, you went out with somebody who lied about their age.
Oh, I've gone out with many guys who've lied about their age. I found out like very far
Like, they
into
say that
knowing
they're
each other.
older, they say that they're younger.
They said they're younger. And
Okay.
so when I was 18, I met someone who said he was 26, and that was already a huge age difference.
Yeah.
But he does look very young, and very, like, later into like our talking and seeing one another, I found out he was 32. And that was like the worst, you know, like talking about stomach drop moments.
Yeah.
Finding out that someone was so calculated, because that totally, like, I was thinking 8 years is like a huge stretch, and that already made me feel pretty icky.
Yeah.
But for it to be not 8 years, but 14 years is like stomach, like, you can't come back
And for
from that.
him knowingly doing that.
Yeah, it made me feel, and we've never spoken again since all of that, and I would never do that. But I recently found out that a guy that I used to see for about 9 months, he says he's 29 on Hinge, but he's turning 33 this year.
And it still says he's 29 on
Yep,
Hinge.
still says he's 29.
How is that
I don't know.
possible?
I also
It's
thought...
like every year on his birthday, he just remakes his
So
Hinge.
that's what I think it is. And what was so crazy was so when I met him, I thought he was 29.
Yeah.
And he was actually 30, but he had this whole reason for me as to like why it actually said that. But he wasn't the one that finally told me his age. It was one of his friends. And they were like, oh, you didn't know that like he always does this. And I figured maybe he's grown out of it, because I don't know, 33 is kind of, you know, old. Nope, still lying about it by now. 4 years, not 1. So
Whoa.
that's, you know,
psychotic.
yeah.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about, you brought up like Star-Spangled Kisser, right? You've done a lot of work like in figuring out what people like sexually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And because of your interest in anatomy, because of the podcast, because of the amount of dating that you've done, what can you share with like people who are listening that anything that you've learned really?
Oh, the number one thing that I can share is everyone to some degree is always going to be uncomfortable when you first take your clothes off. And I know the other thing about me too, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just how I choose to operate myself. Like, I don't, you know this about me, like, I'm very choosy with who I sleep with, and I'm very, like, I'm pretty religious, so, like, that's a huge part of my decision making. But that being said, I think, like, once you get to the point of taking your clothes off with someone, everyone has a little bit of anxiety, so approaching it with more confidence. My number one tip though is to, I think, like, be expressive. No one wants, I think the even worse than someone who's lying there not really participating much is
starfish.
Like, worse than starfish is someone who's quiet. Like, I think that there's almost everyone likes to talk about sex in some way, but especially once you've gotten to the point of being in the bedroom with someone, all of my friends' worst sex stories are guys who are silent. And so having someone who's communicative with you about, like, what they like, what they're into, I think is the best step. Like, once you're in the bedroom with someone in that, like, kissing stage, it's always important to ask them, like, what they like, what they are into. And it's not scary, it's not awkward, and kind of reframing, you know, maybe your anxieties around it in your head, I think is the number one skill. And also, don't shove your tongue in anyone's mouth.
No toilet cleaner?
No toilet cleaner. And be engaged. Like, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. No one's, I mean, hopefully, like, no one's forcing you to be there.
Right.
So you would like to think that if you're gonna do it, it should be exciting to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's not about there's any problem with sleeping around, but if you're gonna sleep with 10 people, 100 people, one person, it should be someone that you're really, really excited about, that you're excited to do things to, that you're excited for them to do things to you. And if you don't feel that way, it's probably, like, not actually the best thing that you could be doing then.
Right. You mentioned religion. Tell me a bit about how that plays into your dating life.
Oh, okay. I've actually never been asked that before. So my family's not religious at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a self-identified Christian, but I didn't grow up that way. My mom's side of the family were Jewish, and they're not practicing Jews because of anti-Semitism they faced when they came over to the US. And so they just kind of dropped all religion and then became, like, Hallmark card Christians, where we had a Christmas tree, but I never went to church once growing up. I've never seen her go to church in my life. And I had some very religious friends where I'm from in Florida, and they kind of introduced me to religion, and it became a huge part of how I view relationships and myself. Obviously, like, there was a time when I probably took it a little bit too far and was too hard on myself.
Okay.
But now I look for people, I just can't, my only non-starter is an atheist, mostly because I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think that I'm not religious even because I'm 100% positive there's something else out there. But to be with someone who's 100% positive there's not something out there, I said that a little bit twisted, is, like, not the type of person that I would want to see the world with. And it's not about a specific religion. I'm very open to religions that I would date. I want someone to believe in something bigger than themselves.
Sure.
And that's how I make a lot of my choices, is the hope that there's something more out there and that it's bigger than me and bigger than you. And that's the only, I think, requirement for my dating.
So how did religion play into, like, this dichotomy of being somebody who is so interested in sex
and being, like, also religious?
Yeah.
I definitely think that it brought me a little bit of guilt when I was first becoming, like, a sexual person in sexual relationships. But I was so truly, like, so lucky with my last boyfriend that it really reworked, like, any idea that I had of shame or anything wrong. Like, I think the way that I approach sex now is, like, I just want it to be with someone I really love, who loves me. And I think that any expression of, like, true respectful love is not wrong. And that's kind of my view on sex now. But for a while, like, it definitely, I would feel guilty over, like, even the smallest things, like kissing strangers or, like, whatever it was. So it definitely makes me more thoughtful, I guess, about, like, I'm very good at saying no, and I'm very good at self-control if I'm not super excited about a situation. I also, like, don't love the idea that if you go home with someone, it has to be sex. There are so many other fun ways to, like, not to sound like I'm a mom in the 80s, but, like, you can fool around. I think that there's so much more fun a lot of the time than not.
We need more fooling around.
We need more fooling around. Like, you lose so
More
much.
foreplay.
You need more foreplay. Like, you lose so much of the magic. Like, when's the last time you went over to a guy's apartment and you just, like, made out at his apartment? And
Not your, can't be your apartment.
can't be your apartment. You know, I have a no boys allowed rule.
Yeah.
But I really am serious. My roommate and I talk about it a lot, and I don't like the idea that if you go back with someone that it's a guest to your body in any sort of way, you don't owe anyone anything. And the best lesson that I've ever learned is, like, there was a guy that I went home with, and literally all we did was kiss for like 4 hours, and it was so fun, and it was just like I felt good about myself when I went home, and I wasn't expecting anything, and it was just fun and silly, and that was that. And I like that. I don't like the idea that you need to follow what everyone else is doing, and that you think, oh, if I'm doing this, then it means that. No, you have to do what works for you.
Yeah, I also think recently now with dating apps, dating apps now force you to kind of put out your expectation of like what you're looking for, whether it's like something casual, something long-term, so like open to long-term, but also open to short-term, whatever. There's all of that like language now that exists on apps. But then on top of that, I think there's a lot of this connotation that if you match with someone on an app, that means you're like 100% interested in them, or that like you have like your body somehow is like way more up for grabs to this person. I feel like I've experienced that. I'm no longer on dating apps, but when I was after my last relationship, I felt like that was happening way more than ever. I would match with someone and inherently it would just be like sexual.
Yeah.
The first thing that they would say to me would be something sexual or something insinuating like sex, and that's it. It's like A to Z so quickly, and I think we are missing all the fun part that happens in between. I think we've lost it a little bit. But, you know, bring foreplay back.
Bring foreplay, but like bring fooling around back.
Yeah.
Like, but I think that's so crazy that was such a big part that you experienced that, because I, especially, and I'm sure that you understand this with Drinks First, I think especially once you work in any form of media, but especially dating media, I had guys that would just say the most heinous stuff to me super early on.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've really distanced myself from that podcast branding. But finding guys who didn't, like, you know how crazy it is when you spend hours and hours curating a brand for yourself and working on something, and some guy at Wilfie and Nell says to you, "Are you going to talk about me on the podcast?"
Oh my God.
What is there to talk about, dude? Like,
You're not interesting enough.
Or you're not interesting to my audience. Like, it's fine that, like, you want someone to talk about you. Like, you know, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. That's perfectly fine. But what makes you think our 30-second interaction where you stared at my chest the whole time and made, I don't know, a somewhat sexual assaulty joke is going to make it on the podcast? You're going on a watch list, baby. Like, you're not going on the podcast. Like, in what world?
Honestly. No, that has happened to me too. I think people love the idea of being talked about.
People
which is
love
so
it.
Crazy.
It makes
when you're
everyone
a
horny.
public figure, yeah.
It makes everyone horny. Everyone. It's like the perfect way for them to live out that. What's the opposite of voyeurism? Is it? Because I know there's voyeurism is like to watch people, but the what about like being watched?
Being watched.
Yeah.
And being an exhibitionist.
Yeah. Like, I think it's like an active exhibitionism that people like.
Yeah. Well, I think that people also like to feel important. Very few people understand the experience of like, especially running dating media and like being a public figure. What sort of scrutiny did that have on your life and your dating beyond, like, I'm sure you got recognized every now and then. I'm sure you were getting obscene messages and then all the things that happen that's like, don't put me on the podcast. Like, that bullshit.
I would say the two main things happened. I'll never forget one time I was at Funny Pretty Nice. And
wow. What should be a safe space.
was at Funny Pretty Nice. Acquired style. I was at Funny Pretty Nice, and the girl behind the counter, so sweet. This was years ago. I don't think she works there now. She points at me across the store. There are other people in the store. She goes, "Oh my God, you're the blowjob girl." Pause, sister. Blowjob girl? Like, thanks. But like, what?
No, thanks.
Like, and I was in the front. Like, it was broad daylight.
Yeah.
Like, there were other shoppers. I was like, me? Like, you're. Like, hello? Like, that's...
You're like, the other blowjob
girl? Like, no, not me. I use teeth. Like,
I use teeth.
But no.
Number one tip.
But so it was like something like that where I'm just like, oh God, what the hell? And then the other thing that I had is I met someone... So, to give a timeline, so I start the podcast fall 2021, and I met someone in the spring of 2022. And I saw them every single day for 8 months. And this man, to say psychologically tortured my life is like not, it wouldn't even scratch the surface. I mean, you know the details of
It
this.
was like Steven from Tell Me Lies type of manipulation.
Type of crazy behavior. And I'm sure he would listen to this and he'd be like, really? Like, that's her takeaway from this? Like, it was so, he was blissfully ignorant to like the impact of his actions and how they left me. But I felt so, part of why I left the podcast, granted there was 9 months in between the end of that and my leaving the show, but I was not seeing anyone else the entire time that I was seeing him. And so he was really my only source of content. So I would talk about all of these. He did do really romantic things for me, but he also treated me worse than anyone's ever treated me in my entire life. And I felt so dishonest lying to my audience. What was I going to say? Oh, this guy, like, respect yourself. This guy brought me flowers. He was so sweet. He took me to this amazing dinner. And then we went here. Also, while I was laying in bed with him, he got a paragraph from a girl asking them, what are we? And was sleeping with her the entire time after lying to me about it and introducing me to her. Like, what am I going to say that to my audience of, like, young girls? Like, I felt like I was a fraud. I felt really fraudulent when all of that was going on. And he listened to every single episode and he would give me feedback about every single episode. And I felt like I had nothing that was mine anymore and I had no privacy. And I felt an obligation to be in his good graces, but also an obligation to be honest with my audience. But the obligation I felt manipulated to by him outweighed like the honesty to my listeners.
At what point did you realize he was extremely manipulative?
There was one day where we went to a party. It was like one of our mutual friends' birthdays, and we went to this house party after, and I recognized someone there. This man was, I'm sorry, I always feel weird saying this, but it was a gay man. And he was very, like, you could probably put two and two together. And he came up to me and he all had some type of sex company and he asked to be on my podcast and we were sharing Instagram information. And he comes up to me and he pulls me aside. This is after, by the way, he was going up to any beautiful female influencer and negging them repeatedly to try to get their number. And I didn't say anything. I was over it. And he was like, let's go. Like, because we lived a block away from each other. He was like, I want to walk home now. And I was like, okay, what's wrong? We walk out of this apartment in Soho and he is walking 30 feet in front of me, like runs in front of me. And I'm like, what is going on?
This is the man who's lied about his age,
yes.
right?
Who lied about his age currently.
Yeah, currently.
And I was like, what's going on? Why are you running away from me like this? And he goes, I don't think we should hang out I don't think we should go out together anymore. And I said, okay, why? And he goes, why were you giving that guy your number? I go, the gay man who was getting my Instagram to come on my podcast. And he was like, well, I didn't know. And I said, do you have eyes? And I go, it shouldn't have mattered either way, but I wasn't behaving in any type of way to get a reaction out of you. I'm so confused. We were out with some of his friends. He goes, I don't think you should go out with my friends without me because I don't want to see you with anyone else. And I go, what? And then he goes, but I also don't think we should hang out just as friends because I can't just be friends with you. And I said, okay. And he goes, but I still want to keep seeing you. And I go, we're standing outside of Washington Square Park screaming at each other at this point. And I don't raise my voice at anyone. And he says to me, I don't want to go out with you alone. I don't want to go out with you with our friends. I don't want to be just friends with you. I don't want to date you. I still want to keep seeing you. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, what? Like, that was the moment where we continued to scream and argue for 30 minutes outside of the park. And I just was crying. I was sobbing. And I was like, this is so unfair. And I walked home and I remember just falling on my floor. And the way in which, he acted when I then met my boyfriend 9 months later, it was really like a wake-up call to me and how I should be treated. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because we did have a really deep, true connection. But for whatever reason, I don't know why he decided to treat me that way. I don't know, like, we shared something really special, but at the same time, it was so poisoned with, like, everything else that it definitely, like, shaped my view on dating very strongly.
So where are you at now? What are you looking for? What has dating been like for you recently? What's next?
Oh, goodness. Great question, Ariana. So I am definitely in the healing phase after my breakup. And I would say, like, I am intentionally dating. I don't want to ever have to convince myself to like someone. I don't think that that's, like, a great start to a relationship. obviously feelings and respect and attraction can grow to some degree, but I put a pause. I'm not on any dating apps, and I go out every weekend with my friends, and I talk to guys when I go out, but I think I'm looking for someone who is really wanting a partner. I know like the value that I bring to someone's life is being able to help them and work through their problems with them and make their life easier. I love acts of service, and someone who wants to feel supported and has a lot of their own stuff going on is really what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm not trying to force a shoot that doesn't fit, because I do love being single. And it's really fun. A lot of our friends are single right now. And there's a lot of giggles that go along with that. So it's exciting. I think that, did that answer it? Like,
Yeah.
I think that I would like respect to my feelings. I don't like the idea that moving on from your past necessarily, we were talking about this morning, means that you need to try to be actively pursuing something new. I'm kind of just trusting that I do believe like what's meant for you like can never miss you. So if someone's meant to be in my life and I'm meant to meet them, I know it'll happen. I'm probably not like super actively searching to find that person, but I'm hoping that they'll come to me.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
And like that could happen at like drinks first event. Whoa, that's crazy.
so crazy.
What a like crazy thing for you to bring up.
What a crazy my friend met someone at the Drinks First event at
That is
Volley.
true. That is
She
true.
did.
She texted me and she was like, I had so much fun. Also, I think I met someone.
Yeah, and they're going on a date on Saturday.
I love that.
And so like Drinks First really, really, really works. So at the meantime though, like what I would have to say too is there's no timeline on your healing or what you should think and what you should feel, and like truly whether you're holding on to something from before, whether you're looking to the future, like what's meant for you, like approach life with an open hand, because
Totally.
like you don't need to white knuckle something. If you're white knuckling something, it's not for you.
Yeah.
Like just let whatever is meant to be.
I've always said that. I think when people come to me about their relationships and their dating advice, I say if it feels easy and you're not stressed about if they're texting you, what's coming next, like, do they like you? That means that's the right thing that you should be pursuing. It shouldn't feel hard. And when it doesn't feel hard, it is probably like you're on the right track. So I'm totally of that vein. Okay, we are nearing our end. We end every single episode with a series called Shots, where I'll ask you rapid fire questions and you have to answer them.
Okay.
Can't think. All right. Are you ready to do some shots?
I'm ready to do some shots.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay. Pepsi or Coke?
Oh, Coke.
Delivery or sit down restaurant?
Delivery during winter, sit down restaurant during any warm months.
Bus or train?
Bus east to west, train north and south.
Facts. Okay.
Can you tell I'm ADHD?
Country or city?
City.
Morning or night?
Night.
Call or text?
Call.
Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok. This is so funny. This is hilarious. I'm putting my sucking skills to use. Oh, and you keep this video for later.
Drink.
Okay. I'm trying, I'm laughing. Okay, do you want me to choke? That's part of the 13 steps.
What's your...
It is. That's like step number 8.
We need to talk about the steps.
No, you can attach. Okay, continue. I'm drinking.
What's your typical Sunday?
Oh, Sundays are for boyfriends. So when I don't have a boyfriend, I wake up in the morning and then I go to SLT with my roommate, and then we go for a long, we call them dog walks. It's the opposite of a hot girl walk. It's a walk that you have to do when you feel mentally ill. So we dog walk ourselves to get the zoomies out, and we get smoothies with Joe and the juice, and then we talk about everything that's happened that went wrong in the past 5 years. Every Sunday. I'm not lying. That's what we do every single Sunday.
I'm aware. What's your favorite season?
Fall.
What's your favorite song at the moment?
Oh, I'm God by Imogen Heap and Clams Casino. Very much Tumblr 2014.
Rate yourself out of 10.
8 out of 10.
Okay.
Is that ambitious?
No, that's low, I feel like.
Well, like, I'm not gonna say 10 out of 10 after I was like, I don't like men who didn't go to college. Like, who am I to say that?
Okay, last question. If you had a boat, what would you name it?
Part or Red Seas? Like, I don't know, like something stupid. Or like something stupid, like Shiphead. Shiphead or, actually, nope, I can't say the rest of them out loud.
Okay, yeah, that's enough. What are the 13 steps?
Can I pull them out on my phone?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to read them? And you can't keep all of these in.
Probably good.
Yeah.
Oh, baby, it is. Trust me, I read these everywhere I go. Everywhere. They somehow make it. Okay.
Some behind
This
the
is
scenes.
the document.
That
Start-
you made, or
I made this. I wrote this. I wrote this before I gave a blowjob.
where is it? What, like, where does it exist?
Google?
Like, we can find it if we Google it?
No, it's like in my Google Docs. My Google
Oh.
requests access to it all the time still. It's called 13 in parentheses. I don't think I knew how parentheses worked. 13, nothing else in parentheses. Step blowjob guide.
13.
13. 13. I don't know. Okay, number 1. Start by kissing their neck, ears, lick or suck too. 2. Begin to kiss down their body. Mix using pecks and kisses with tongue. Do this until you are down there. Number 3. Go back up and make out with them again, comma, make them wait. You go, girl.
You go,
You go,
diva.
girl. Step 4. This is where it gets freaky. This is where it gets so freaky. Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy shit. I can't believe I wrote this. Oh my god. I'm having an out-of-body experience and not in the fun way. Lick where their balls touch their perineum and lick all the way up to the tip. Look up while doing this. Eye contact is key. Then these are... No sucking yet. Now you know why every guy always comes back. Now you know. Now you know why everyone always comes back. This part is a 2-part. There's 5A and 5B.
Okay, let's do
That's why it's 13. 5A. Grab the base of the shaft and spit on the tip. Don't be nervous or self-conscious. The more the better. Have the spit drip down the shaft. Take one hand and start jerking them off. But focus, this part's bold, only on jerking off where the tip meets the shaft. Use a lot of pressure. Exclamation point. 5B. While you were jerking them off, sorry, I'm like really having Tourette's right now. While you were jerking them off, start sucking their balls. Try to make the popping noise with your mouth when they go in and out. Mix in using some expletives and moans. Just say swear words, Sydney. Expletives. Who am I, Rihanna? Like, but no, literally.
Is Rihanna like a big work girl?
The last time I read this,
Stephen Hawking.
the last time I read this in a group setting, one of the guys, like, hearing this goes, like, right after, he goes, like, unmarked. Okay, step 6. After doing that for a bit, look all the way up and start sucking the tip as hard as you can. Put the seal of your lips where the tip meets the shaft. Can you tell I'm autistic, by the way? Like, can you tell?
Slightly.
7. There's a lot more after this, Ariana. Take your one hand and jerk them off while sucking, and then take 2 knuckles from the other hand and press hard up and down the perineum. This isn't weird and doesn't hurt. 8.
2 knuckles?
2 knuckles, like that. That's how. Yeah.
Odd.
Yeah, wait, what?
Like the
I'm
space
sorry.
between like your ass and your balls.
Oh, like push.
Push up, but like
Okay.
not like no hole. Like
Okay.
you're not no
No
hole.
hole.
No hole. Like I'm not a hole
Just
girl.
the
There are holes I can't
tape.
fill. Just the tape. But I like saying perineum because I'm
Right.
autistic.
More scientific.
8. Oh, don't get too excited, Owen. When you start to, when you notice, I know you'll save this audio clip for later. When you start noticing they're getting close, start saying phrases like, I want you to come for me, baby, or I love sucking your cock. It's easier to get out than you think. 9. The most important step is to stop doing all of this. Take your thumb and press at the base of the shaft and press hard, moving all the way up to the tip. Once your finger's on the tip, you massage the hole. 10. Once you can tell what your partner likes the most, and then I put in parentheses, how generous, jerking off, ball sucking, thumb trick, perineum massage, mix up the steps until they're ready to come. 11. Start begging them to come, tell them how much you want it. 12. If you're feeling adventurous, ask them where they want to come, in you or on you. Don't do that. Don't do that. 13, once they come, make them return the favor over and over and over. XO.
Great last tip. Yay! All right, thank you so much for coming on. If you're interested in matching with our guests,
Don't worry.
you can
6 inches, nothing less. Take it or leave it.
take it or leave
Take it or leave it.
Above average, nothing less.
Please. Dear God.
Oh boy. Okay. If you're interested in matching with our guests, you can visit our Instagram at drinks.first and find the matching form in our link in bio. Fill that out and you'll see the steps from there. Other than that, you can follow us on Instagram. You can find me, your host, at ariana.nathani on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on Drinks First.
Anytime. All right, scene.